and we'll try to get this addressed. Okay. On to the next slide. Okay, so let's see if we can't make a few introductions staff-wise. So, you know me, Lindsay Austin. We do have some PAAO staff here, and if you all can just kind of pop on to your camera on and say hi and introduce yourself, and in the Richmond office. I can't see everybody. I will try, but if you can maybe just take turns, maybe starting with Joanne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Joanne Pierman. I'm a program manager at DHCD, and also I am temporarily acting as the acting associate director for PAAO. I'll pass the mic to Kirsten, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kirsten Vroman. I am a program administrator out of the Richmond office. I'll pass the baton to Jessica.
Hello, everyone. I am Jessica Gaines. I'm a program administrator out of the Richmond office, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the how to apply this season.
Hello, this is Kathy Beek, and I'm with the Richmond PAA office. Thank you. I'm a program administrator. Thank you.
Okay, we got all of Richmond. Anybody else?
Thank Jenna.
Jenna's on the road today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kathy Boatwright.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathy Boatwright. I am the program manager for DHCD's Abingdon field office, and I'm going to pass it to Kelly.
I was muted, I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Chairfitch. I'm the Planning Grant Specialist. I'm located out of the Abington office, but I work all across the state, and I'm going to pass it to Marcia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marcia Dempsey. I am a program administrator out of the Abingdon field office. And I'll pass it to Deanna.
I knew that was going to happen. I'm Deanna. I'm in the Abingdon field office, also a program administrator, and I'm going to pass it to Stuart.
Hi, I'm Stuart Burrell. I'm a program administrator in the Abingdon field office, and I'll pass to Riley.
Hi, Riley Drake out of the Abingdon field office. I'm a program administrator, and I will pass over to Jennifer Ketchum.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Ketchum. I'm an ARC program administrator out of the Abingdon office.
That covers everybody at AFO.
Okay, and then I guess I failed to say that I'm with the Office of Program Policy and Compliance at DHCD, and I have at least 2, maybe 3 staff on the call. Catherine, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there, I'm Catherine Farnsler. I see some familiar faces and names. My office, I'm on Lindsay's team, and we just help out PAAO on some of the program design stuff. So thank you all for being here today.
And hello, everyone. My name is Cameron George. I'm also on Lindsay Austin's team with Catherine. Happy to have you all here and show you kind of some of the changes that we've made to the CDBG program this year.
And I'm not sure, is Melissa on? Okay, I don't think she is. Okay, so that's good. Let's move along to talking about some CDBG application stuff. So just an overview, you know, CDBG has been around for a while, since 1974, and at our agency since '82. So we, as an agency, we've had a lot of experience with the CDBG program, and there's quite a few staff on our team that's had quite a bit of experience with it. Please let's mute our computers. Okay. And as many of you know, that anytime we are working with CDBG, we have to meet one of 3 national objectives whenever we are using the funds. It has to benefit either low to moderate income persons, or we have to be using it to aid in preventing or eliminating slums or blight, or it needs to be meeting an urgent need. So that is just, that's the thing, whenever you're using CDBG funds, you need to be meeting one of those 3 national objectives. Okay. So for CDBG funds in general, the funds are allocated on a formula basis by HUD, and these funds go to they go directly to entitlements, and the balance of that goes to states. So there are, a number of entitlements in the state that receive these funds directly. If for those entitlement areas, you are not eligible to receive funds through DHCD's CDBG program. However, if you are not in one of those entitlement areas, then you are eligible to receive CDBG funds through DHCD. So there is an appendix in our program design, our program guidelines, that spells out exactly which which localities are eligible for the funding through DHCD's program. Okay. So this year, and it's relatively flat. We had 19 million something last year, and we have 19 million for 53,948 this year. As you can see, the majority of that will be project grants, what we have formerly called competitive, but that will be the project funding. The majority of the funds will be 16 million. Another $750,000 will go to project planning grants. And then we have a set aside of $1 million that will be for urgent need in case we need a set aside of urgent need for urgent needs. Okay. Now here's the deadlines that we're looking at. And some of y'all may notice that there was an adjustment made. We originally announced an August 1st deadline for the project grants, what we were calling competitive grants. That has been changed from August 1st to now it is August 26th. So that is now open, and we know that there's several of you have already started applications in the system in CAMS, but please do note the new deadline of August 26th. And then planning grants and urgent needs, those are that's open submission. So we accept applications on a rolling basis until those funds are gone. So we review them as they come in and award them. They meet threshold requirements. Okay, so this gets, I get to share the presenting responsibilities, and Kathy will be now joining us to tell you about the programmatic changes for this year.
And Lindsay, thank you. It's actually Joanne doing this section.
Oh, Joanne, so sorry. It's
all good.
Okay, no problem. Programmatic changes for this year. I'm going to go directly by the slides because I don't want to misspeak. Don't have this all in my head yet. So we're going to talk about what's going to be changed. First, project grants. All implementation projects, regardless of types, will be competitive. The project types are economic development, public infrastructure, housing rehabilitation, and public services. Also, grant administration is now going to be labeled as project delivery cost. So instead of admin in your budget, it will be called project delivery cost. Our open submission grants will be planning grants and urgent need. Planning grants have been further divided into two different categories: activation planning grants with a maximum limit of $40,000 and project-driven planning grants with a limit of $75,000. So please note the reduced cost limits. Next slide, please. No comprehensive community development projects this program year. Those were known as CCD, and they usually had 2 or more activities involved. So now a locality may submit 2 applications during the same funding cycle, one for housing rehabilitation and one for public infrastructure. And this is to streamline things and make them more easy to navigate. Also, it will allow you to have more money in each of the separate categories. For both infrastructure and housing rehab projects, a grantee may incorporate additional ancillary infrastructure activities that align with the proposed primary activities. Items such as stormwater drainage, sidewalks, or curb and gutter. So there's still that opportunity to have other activities in your project, but they will be ancillary activities. Okay, next slide. Housing rehab will be for targeted or scattered site. The allowable costs are in this chart. They are the same as last year. For post-1978 housing, $125,000 in allowable construction cost. 10% of that can be for the rehab specialist fee. And then there's another 10%, more or less almost a contingency, but that was the increase that we allowed in the past several years because of the cost of materials and shipping and whatnot. We're hoping you won't have to tap into that, but we wanted to leave it in. For pre-78 rehab, those limits are the same, but those houses will have to have more work done as it relates to lead. And we can talk to you more about that during our Q&A sessions later or on a one-to-one. And then for substantial reconstruction, the allowable cost limit for construction is $150,000 with 10% for rehab specialist and 10% for any increased costs as it relates to COVID-related issues. If you have an alternative septic system, you can add an additional $10,000 for construction cost and $10,000 for various fees related to the alternative septic. On a case-by-case basis, a pre-78 home can use the presumption of lead with a $25,000 base cost limit. And we're encouraging everyone to tap into the lead hazard reduction program for pre-78 rentals and homes occupied by children ages 6 or less. we do have quite a bit of funding in the lead hazard reduction program, and we want to marry these two programs together for those particular houses, the rentals and those occupied by children 6 and under. Next slide. For a housing rehab targeted and scattered site, a reminder that there's 0% interest forgivable loans with an amortization period based on the amount of the CDBG investment. As you can see here, up to $50,000, we'll have a 5-year forgivable loan. Up to $100,000, we'll have a 10-year forgivable loan, and between $100,001 and above will be a 15-year forgivable loan. So as you pretty much can imagine, most of the loans are going to be 15-year forgivable. So please keep that in mind. That's a great departure from our 5-year forgivable loans that we've had in the past, or even 10-year forgivables we had at one time. But this year, it can go up to 15-year forgivable. So make sure you're sharing that with your communities. Next slide. Build America, Buy America, also known as BABA, does not apply to housing rehab projects if the 3-party construction contract is for up to 4 housing units. This is wonderful news. We can thank Kathy Boatwright for digging deep into the federal regs and recognizing that they did have a more or less waiver or an out for housing rehab projects. And so BABA will not apply to housing rehab, again, if your contract is for less than 4 units. But for us to document compliance, we have some extra paperwork you'll have to do to illustrate that we are meeting that threshold. First, you'll need to complete the optional HUD preference checklist for each housing unit, and you'll have to upload the checklist and the 3-party contract for each housing unit to show that the contract is not for more than 4 housing units. So we have the optional preference checklist for you to use. It's a 1-pager. It's really easy. We've sent it out in the past when we sent out our BABA regulations. So you can get that from any staff member. And those will document the fact that housing rehab does not require adherence to Build America, Buy America. Thanks again, Kathy. Next slide.
Welcome.
It does, however, BABA does apply to pretty much all building materials for fiscal year 2025 in the CDBG program. And here is the list. I'm not going to go over it. Pretty much anything that you buy: iron and steel, metals, lumber, plastic, polymer-based materials, glass, fiber, just everything, okay? And again, we do have the forms that need to be filled out and the process for following BABA. It was phased in by HUD, so for the past 3 or 4 years, they have incrementally added. It started out with just iron and steel, then they added the metals, and then they added this and that. And so now we're in the full-blown reporting cycle where we have to make sure that all supplies are made locally. Next slide. Okay. Are there any
We do have
questions?
2 questions in the
Okay.
chat. The first one is from Deanna, and she wanted to know if that's a de minimis waiver. Deanna, feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question if you'd like.
That's
I
okay.
can answer that question.
Yeah, we did get clarification. That was just the loose term that I had heard that before, and I've since had to use the form, and Kathy can explain. I just wanted to clarify for myself that I was thinking the same thing.
Yes, and for Deanna's benefit, yes, she is thinking the same thing. In that checklist, there are a couple of different options to check off for why a project does not apply for this. And the de minimis waiver is that $250,000 threshold, which would trip the Build America, Buy America requirements for a CDBG project. And so we're kind of using that in conjunction with the CPD notice, the Community and Planning notice from HUD about the 1 to 4 unit threshold. So when that comes up on your project, it's a super simple check this box, sign here, you're done kind of checklist for our housing rehab projects and the Build America, Buy America applicability.
Thank you, Kathy. We have one more question from Robert Crutchfield. They want to know, can BABA be used in conjunction with other grants? They're building at 21 units and they want to know how they can utilize BABA to help build the homes.
That's a great question. But the Build America, Buy America must be utilized if you have an infrastructure project that is being funded with federal dollars. And the timing and the subject and the material subject to that requirement is based on the federal funding source. So for CDBG, if we could bump back the slide to the previous slide. Our project has CDBG dollars in it, and it's federal fiscal year 25, which is the federal fiscal year that will be funding our future projects. All of these materials are subject to the Buy America preference. So iron and steel, non-ferrous materials, like any type of building material, any type of manufactured materials that will be going into a federally funded project with CDBG dollars would be subject to this project, or excuse me, to this requirement. And each federal funding program has their own interpretation of the Build America, Buy America requirements. So if you have a project with multiple federal sources, there might be multiple compliance requirement documents that must be completed. And wherever possible, we are going to try to streamline those documents with other federal partners that are in our CDBG funded projects. All
Okay,
right,
I think we can move on.
Okay. Yep, that was a great question. Thank you for asking.
Next slide.
Okay, and now it's my turn to chat a little bit about our CDBG project grants. As mentioned previously, this used to be referred to as our competitive grants or community improvement grants, and we are now referring to them as our CDBG project grants. Next slide. This table is one that I'm sure everyone on this meeting is interested in checking out. This gives the maximum grant award thresholds and project delivery cost thresholds for each of the different project types. And as previously mentioned, we have grouped these projects into 4 categories: economic development, infrastructure, housing rehabilitation, and public services. And within some of those project types, there are different maximum award thresholds based on the project type and the amount of localities to partner on that particular project type. So under economic development, we have job creation and retention. And if you have one locality, the maximum award is $1.25 million. With a max project delivery cost of $125,000. For 2 localities partnering on a job creation or retention project, the maximum award is $1.5 million with a max project delivery cost of $150,000. Our other economic development project type is business district revitalization. That's what the acronym BDR stands for in this table. And a locality may request up to 1.25 million for a BDR project, and the max project delivery cost is $125,000. Under our infrastructure project type, we have our traditional water sewer projects. We're no longer doing the regional water sewer or construction ready. Those are all condensed under our water sewer infrastructure. And one locality is eligible to request 2 million with a max project delivery cost of 125,000. 2 or more localities may request up to 3.5 million with a max project delivery cost of 150,000. Community service facilities is one of our project types that used to be a standalone category. It is now under infrastructure, and that is for projects that are building or renovating an existing structure for a community service type of program delivery. And the maximum award for that is 1.25 million with a max project delivery cost of 125,000. And housing production, the max award for that is 2 million with the max project delivery cost of 200,000. And housing production refers to the public infrastructure development that must take place before single family or multifamily housing production can be developed. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of slides. Housing rehabilitation, regardless of whether it is a targeted housing rehab project or a scattered site housing rehab project, the max award is 1.25 million with max project delivery cost of 125,000. And then finally, public services, if there is one locality, it is a max award of 250,000 with project delivery costs capped at 25,000. And 2 or more localities, the max award for public services would be 500,000 with a max project delivery cost of 50,000. Okay, and if you'll go to the next slide, please. Some of the other costs will get covered in a later section for planning grants for open submission urgent need. One change that we have made with our project grants is how the CAMS budget categories will be set up. So some of you who have already started working on your application might already be familiar with our new CAMS budget layout. But for those who have not had the opportunity to start a project yet, project application in CAMS, we wanted to go over at a high level what the cost categories will look like when you go to set up your CAMS budget for your application. And we have tried to simplify the CAMS budget categories to make it easier for both developing your project and for requesting remittances should your application be awarded. So for infrastructure projects, we have in bold, these are the larger budget categories that align with our HUD IDIS matrix codes. And we have water improvements, wastewater improvements, storm drainage improvements, sidewalk or street improvements, and community service facilities. And then within those larger cost categories, we have our subcategories of construction or construction related soft costs. And in the case of community service facilities, sometimes folks will request CDBG funds for the purchase of equipment. So that is covered in there as well. And construction related soft costs for an infrastructure project would include any architectural fees, any engineering fees, any surveying, any geotech, things like that. For housing rehab, we have these categories grouped as owner occupied rehab, owner occupied substantial, that refers to substantial reconstruction, and then investor owned rehab. And then within those, we have sub activities for construction. That's actually the rehabilitation cost for the house. Construction soft cost, and this includes your rehab specialist fees, your lead testing, your radon testing, your temporary relocation if applicable, and it includes your home maintenance education. And then within those categories, we have a line for other in case some expense pops up, as can often happen, and there's not a neat bucket for construction or construction related soft costs. So if you think you have a cost that would need to go into the other category, we encourage you to contact a program administrator or a program manager to talk through that. For public services, we have operations, program staff costs like personnel, salary, fringes, supplies, and other, because out of all of our categories, this public service might be one where the other category will be utilized more often. And then finally, for economic development, we have job creation and retention. And that's like any type of training activities that go along with that. Construction, and that specifically refers to any public infrastructure or site development in preparation for a business to come in and build on a site. Construction related soft costs like architectural, engineering, surveying, those examples I previously listed under infrastructure, and then other. And then our business district revitalization, that includes the construction, and construction will include facade improvements in addition to any other public infrastructure improvements like sidewalks or streetscaping or lighting, things like that. Okay. Next slide. So now the next few slides are going to go into a little bit more detail about the different project types. And I will go ahead and offer that we will be doing question and answer sessions for each of these project types following today's How to Apply. We have separate registrations for those, and we encourage you to register for any and all that apply. So economic development, we have two categories. We have job creation and or retention. And these projects will either create or retain jobs that are held by low to moderate income residents, or these positions will be made available to low to moderate income residents. And the project types include site redevelopment. So if you have a site that would be good for business or industry to relocate, there is CDBG funds available to help with that site preparation and infrastructure to the site, like water or sewer. And there's also an opportunity for CDBG funds to be invested into off-site improvements. For example, if you have an industrial park and you're going to have a business that has agreed to relocate into that industrial park, but your water system can't handle the capacity for that business to do their work, we can assist with the development of a water storage tank that is not located within the industrial park. Job creation or retention programs, that could be a particular training program to equip residents with the skills that they need to go out and get jobs in a particular field within your community. For example, in the past, we have funded programs at community colleges to train students for jobs in the automotive services field. If we have a project where there will be an industry partner, we will expect there to be an industry agreement signed with the grantee and the industry partner, and an irrevocable letter of credit or other approved security document will be required for the amount of the award. So we want to share this up front. So if there are any grantees who are having conversations with businesses about potentially locating in their project area and a joint application for CDBG funds, we want to be clear that a letter of credit or other DHCD approved security document will be required in the amount of the CDBG award. And that has to remain in place until all program requirements have been met by the grantee. And as previously mentioned, the max award is $1.25 million for one locality and $1.5 million for two or more. And the project delivery cost limit is $125,000 for one locality and $150,000 for two or more. Next slide, please. Our second economic development project type is business district revitalization, and applicants may only apply for a business district revitalization project grant if they have already had a BDR planning grant. So you must have a planning grant before you can apply for a BDR project grant. And You also must prioritize facade improvements before any other CDBG funded activities may begin. And the reason we prioritize the facade improvement activity is because that is the activity connected to the national objective for this project type, which is the removal of slum and blighting influences. And when you are thinking about your business district revitalization project, when you're thinking about it from the planning grant stage, do keep in mind that the project area properties must either have 25% physical blight or at least a 50% vacancy rate, and that's your economic blight. The max award for a business district revitalization project is 1.25 million, and the project delivery cost limit is 125,000. Next slide. Next project type, and the project type with the most sub-activities, is public infrastructure. And the first
When you're done with your
is,
car, you might be able to try one.
and if folks could mute their mics, thank you so much. Water, sewer, and streets. For these projects, at least 51% of the project area must be low to moderate income. And there are a couple of ways to document this eligibility requirement, and that is through surveys of the project area, or you can use documentation from HUD's low mod income mapping tool. And we'll show folks what that mapping tool looks like and how to navigate it later on in this presentation. And keep in mind, your LMI documentation, whether it is by a survey of the project area or the data provided by HUD, that's just your ticket into the eligibility door. It does not guarantee that your project will be funded. Okay. For water and sewer projects, DHCD currently does have a per connection cost limit. And this is something to keep in mind when you are building out your construction budgets for your water and sewer projects. The CDBG investment per water connection is $30,000, and the CDBG investment per sewer connection is $50,000. The maximum award for a public infrastructure project serving one locality is $2 million, and the max award for a public infrastructure project serving 2 or more localities is $3.5 million. And the project delivery cost limits is $125,000 for one locality and $150,000 for 2 or more localities. Next slide. Our next public infrastructure type is housing production. And this is infrastructure like water, sewer, streets, sidewalks to support the creation of single or multifamily housing units that are specifically targeted for low to moderate income residents. So this is not for the cost of building the single and multifamily housing units. So the CDBG investment will come in first to help develop the site that will to support the development of the single and multifamily housing units. And during the CDBG improvement period, the locality must have control of the property. We understand with housing production, sometimes a nonprofit might have control of the property because they own the property for the purpose of developing housing production. If that's the case, we will talk to the grantee during the contract negotiation to make sure that we get the appropriate type of control during the CDBG funded improvements. And at the time of the application, the grantee, or excuse me, the applicant must include a copy of a market study showing that there is a clear need for the specific type of housing units to be developed as a part of the CDBG project. The maximum award for a public infrastructure housing production project is $2 million, and the project delivery cost limit is $200,000. Next slide. Our next public infrastructure project type is community service facilities, and this refers to the construction or renovation of a building that is associated with the delivery of services made available to low and moderate income residents of a particular area. And some examples of our community service facility types are child or adult care facilities, health clinics or dental clinics, or facilities for protected populations like the elderly or the homeless or persons with disabilities. And the examples listed on this slide, DHCD has funded in the past. So if there's a particular community service facility type that doesn't neatly fit those examples, please do reach out to us and we can have that conversation one-on-one to see if that particular service would benefit or qualify for a community service facilities grant. And similar to the housing production public infrastructure projects, the applicant must have control of the property during the CDBG funded improvements. And the maximum award for our community service facilities is 1.5 million, and the project delivery cost limit is 125,000. Next slide. Okay, and we're moving on to housing rehabilitation. This is for a targeted neighborhood housing rehab project, and this is for housing rehab activities, substantial reconstruction, removal of residential blight in a targeted, well-defined project area. And the applicant must explain to us how that project area was defined. Oftentimes, geographical boundaries like rivers or creeks or particular streets make it easy to create a well-defined project area. So the applicant must explain, hey, we picked this area because these streets are, they make a neat square, or this street borders Possum Creek, and we have 20 houses here, and it makes sense to start here and then move toward the next project area in a future phase. So the applicant will explain why they targeted that area and how they created the boundaries around that area. And all housing rehab projects must be 100% low to moderate income benefit. So it's important that when you are doing your planning and preparation for a housing rehab project, that you do those initial income surveys to verify that the houses that you are proposing to serve in your CDBG application have initially been screened to meet that low to moderate income national objective. Owner occupied and investor owned households are eligible for housing rehab activities. Our substantial reconstruction is only for owner-occupied households. And for those who might be unfamiliar with substantial reconstruction takes place when there is an existing housing unit that is in such poor shape that it makes sense to invest in a new house for that person. And then we demolish their existing home and build a new home, substantially reconstruct a home on that existing footprint from the previous housing unit. And the maximum award for our targeted neighborhood housing rehab is 1.25 million, and the project delivery cost limits is 125,000. Next slide. And this is scattered site housing rehab, and it is in an area that is non-contiguous. It's not easy to find a contiguous area or a well-defined area for your housing rehab project, and yet you have many houses in your locality that need housing rehab or could benefit from housing rehab. So just like with targeted, you have to define your project area and why you created those boundaries. The same is true for scattered site. You'll have to explain why there was not enough homes to do a targeted site housing rehab project. Explain that you might have a county that's really rural and the streets are farther apart and the homes are farther apart, so it makes sense to do scattered site. So explain to us the thought process and the assessment process that you went through to identify the homes and why scattered site is the better approach versus a targeted neighborhood housing rehab project. Just like targeted housing rehab, scattered site also has to be 100% low mod income benefit. And also, like targeted, owner occupied and investor owned households are eligible for housing rehab, and only owner occupied households are eligible for substantial reconstruction. And the same cost limits apply for scattered site as they do for targeted site. Okay, next slide. Okay, our next larger category for project grants is public services. And this is still somewhat of a new project type for us at DHCD, but we are learning that it's a very worthwhile project type. This is for new services or expanding services in response to a community need. And this is for non-construction costs. So if you've got an organization that needs construction costs, then community service facilities would be the appropriate project type. Public services is for non-construction, like personnel or supplies, equipment, things of that nature. And some of the public services types that we have been targeting would be child care programs, health service programs, and food security programs. And we have learned the hard way that food is not an eligible item for CDBG. So CDBG funds will not be used for the purchase of food should you be considering a food security public service project. The max award for a public service project is $250,000 if it's for one locality, and up to $500,000 if it's going to benefit 2 or more localities. And the project delivery cost limits are $25,000 for one locality and $50,000 for 2 or more localities. Next slide. All right, the question slide. And I think I saw some questions pop up in the chat.
Correct. So we have several questions. I'm just going to go in order in which they were asked. So the first one is from Jeremy. Do the new CAMS budget categories also apply to projects that are currently conducting pre-contract activities, or do they only apply to the new applications submitted this year?
Great question, Jeremy, and it only applies to the new applications. Any current CDBG project that is in a pre-contract space will use the same budget categories that are in CAMS.
The second one comes from Matthew Perkins. Is there a category for I/O substantial?
Fortunately, no. Investor owner substantial reconstruction is not an eligible activity.
Catherine responded to this one, but for Troy Collins and everyone, yes, these will be posted. The slides will be posted as well as a recording of the session. Another question just came in from John Bateman. Are there examples of both CDBG and Virginia housing funds being used for housing production?
I am trying to think. That's a great question, John. I'm glad that you asked. I know that in 2024, we have awarded 2 housing production projects in Southwest Virginia, and I'm trying to remember if Virginia housing funds are a part of those funding packages. I know that there are tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, a part of those projects, and there's other funds offered through DHCD in that project or in those projects.
I'd like to add that I believe a project we're doing in Albemarle County with the Southwood community may have some Virginia housing funds involved as well.
Well, John, you might be right, because one of the housing production projects is in the Mount Rogers footprint, and I don't have all of the leverage funding committed to memory. So it's very likely. That's the Monroe Street project.
So Kathy?
Yes.
This Debbie, the Villas project in Lebanon has block grant and then also Virginia housing funds in it.
Okay, thank you for confirming. So the short answer to your question, John, is yes.
That concludes oh, here we go. Sanji's jumping in. So Kelly left a comment. I believe the West Side Mobile Home Park used VA housing. And Sanji says, Sanji, if you want to jump in and respond, you can feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, to just confirm, right now the housing developer is trying to apply for Virginia housing funds. Those funds are applied for and used by the housing developer when constructing the homes. and the CDBG funds are used merely by the locality to do the infrastructure improvements.
Mhm.
Thank you, Sanji. Emily, did you have something you wanted to say? No. Okay. That kind of concludes the questions we received in the chat. I did just want to call out that this is kind of the biggest changed section. So if there are questions that people have, feel free to raise your hand and we can address them now. Alternatively, we have the email cdbgprogram@dhcd@virginia.com posted on this and pretty much everything else.
All right. I know that we are super excited about this one. My name is Kelly Chairpitch. Like I said earlier, I am the planning grant specialist, and I work all over the state, and I work a lot with what used to be referred to as our open submission projects. Next slide, please. All right. So as was stated beforehand by Joanne and Kathy, the only applications that we will be taking on an open submission grant cycle will be those for urgent need and those for planning grants. And that application cycle is from June 16th until October 16th or until all funding has been committed. And those applications are reviewed on a rolling basis during the application timeframe. Next slide, please. All right, so for planning grants, I believe Ellen Smith from CERCAP had this question about the difference between activation and project-driven grants, and we will get to that with the next slide. But for right now, the maximum grant award for activation grants are $40,000. And then for project-driven planning grants, it's $75,000. And there is not a project delivery cost limit, also known as admin cost limit, because these planning grants are pretty much all admin dollars. And then for urgent need, we have raised our cost limit from $1 million up to 1.5 million. And then the project delivery cost limit, previously known as admin cost limit, is $150,000. Next slide, please. All right, so urgent need. So this is our regular urgent need that occurs every year. And this is to support long-term recovery for communities that have experienced weather-related disasters and loss. So we did have a separate, this year only, we had a special urgent need category for PDCs 1 through 3 for Hurricane Helene. And that's separate from what I'm talking about now. This is the urgent need that's always open. You know, heaven forbid, if there was a tornado someplace else, this is the urgent need that you would apply for. And this is an application that is open from now until October. And it has to be supported by either a declaration of emergency by the governor or a declaration of immediate and severe health threat by the state commissioner of health. So usually it is weather related. Like I said, I'm going to use Helene as an example. Hurricane Helene and then the flooding in February 2025 are examples of weather-related urgent need. And then the max award is 1.5 million with a project delivery cost limit of 150,000. Next slide, please. Activation planning grants. So they were previously named community organizing, community needs assessment, or overall assessments. An activation planning grant, I'm going to use my favorite example, the town of Possumville. So let's say that the town of Possumville hasn't worked with DHCD for 10 or 15 years and they have a lot of needs. An activation planning grant is to kind of look at the overall town and prioritize what needs to be in the town. So, for example, hey, we spent $40,000. We talked to the residents. We did some surveys and realized housing is the #1 priority. Infrastructure is a #2 priority. Economic development is a #3 priority. So this is really just to activate you to start your community development process. So it's that overall needs assessment. And we'll talk more about this when we get a little further on into the presentation. And that max award amount is $40,000. Next slide, please. All right, project-driven planning grants. Continuing on with the Possumville example, Possumville said, hey, housing is our #1 priority. So we are going to look at the marsupial neighborhood of Possumville, and we're going to look at doing a housing rehab project. So a project-driven planning grant directly aligns with our CDBG, what used to be called competitive and open submission implementation projects. Now we're just calling them projects. And you use that if you already have a project in mind. You've already done the activation. You already, this is when you have a project in mind. And as Kathy said beforehand, if you want to look at a BDR implementation project, you must complete a planning grant beforehand. And that max amount is $75,000. Next slide, please. All right. So any questions on the planning grant? Any questions on the planning grants or anything? All right, moving along. All right, so I'm going to start with a couple of tips for the public hearing, and then Kathy's going to take over for me. Next slide, please. So public hearings. This is something that I always get questions about. So the public hearings I'm talking about on this slide right here are for public hearings for project grants. So not planning grants. Planning grants are different, and they're in the 2025 program design, pages 8 through 15 is where they talk about this. This is the public hearings for projects that you're going to be doing implementation for. So either construction or buying stuff that isn't planning. So the first public hearing is essentially your overall public hearing to explain to localities, or excuse me, that a locality uses to explain to citizens, this is what CDBG is, this is what we have used it for before as, that kind of thing. So Town of Possumville would say, hey, CDBG is offered through DHCD, they get $19 million a year. We have previously used $1 million of CDBG funding to do an infrastructure project. That would be your first public hearing. And that has to be advertised at minimum of 7 days before you have it in the local newspaper and a second source. So either the newspaper, the town's Facebook page, that kind of thing. The second public hearing, you get more, is the drilled down version. So the second public hearing, once again, using Possumville, hey, the first public hearing, we told you what CDBG was. The second public hearing, we're telling you that we're going to apply for $1.5 million to renovate the marsupial neighborhood for a housing rehab project. And here is the information on that. And that also has to be published in the non-legal section of the local newspaper for at least 7 days prior. You have to do the second form of notification as well. And both the first and the second public hearings must be held at least 1 week apart. Now, a caveat. Let's say the town of Possumville is applying for 4 projects. The first public hearing, if they wanted to do a first public hearing, that one where we're general and tell everybody what CDBG is, you could do one first public hearing to cover all of those 5 projects that the town of Possumville is applying for. And then you would just have to do the second public hearing, the more specific public hearing for each one of those projects. All right. I think I'm done with the public hearing.
Thanks, Kelly. And this slide is just to go over some attachment basics with your CDBG application. So the attachments that we request to be uploaded into CAMS. So Kelly just talked about those advertisements and assurances. Please do attach those to your application. We do verify those public hearing dates and the advertisements at a minimum during our application review. So please do provide that as an attachment to your application. Provide a map of your project area with your application and make sure that that map clearly shows the homes to be improved or the businesses to be improved or the homes to be connected or reconnected to your water and sewer line. And if those homes are low to mod income or non-LMI, as could be the case in some of our water or sewer projects. And then make sure that there's a legend or a key to explain the content of that map. Having a good map helps us visualize spatially the project that you are proposing to complete. And wherever possible, provide pictures of your project area and those proposed structures to be improved. This is especially helpful if you have a housing rehab project or a downtown revitalization project, or if you're going to do any type of community service facility where you are building or improving a structure. Another key attachment is the cost estimate. Please provide a cost estimate that was prepared within the last 2 months of the application deadline. And we recognize that cost estimates are just that. They are estimates. They are moving targets. And so we wanted to provide a reasonable window of time for that cost estimate so that when we have an opportunity to review the application, and then if it's selected for award, that cost estimate wouldn't be 5 years old or 10 years old. And so it wouldn't be too far off of the mark from your cost estimate submitted at the time of the application. And wherever possible, please have this cost estimate be prepared by your licensed architect or your licensed engineer.
Scanned.
Okay.
And
or your rehab specialist.
Yes. Thank you, Joanne. Yes. Or your rehab specialist if it's a housing rehab project. And
within the last 12 months, yes.
Yes, ma'am. And on that note, we expect at least 2 complete work write-ups submitted for a housing rehab project so that we can get an idea of how those cost estimates are developed. And then the next item is documentation of all committed leverage. This factors into the scoring component. So if you have other funds going into your CDBG project, please provide written documentation of that committed leverage. And if the locality is providing some of that leverage, that would need to be documented in a resolution from the locality or on another similar type of document signed by the chief elected or chief administrative official. And then if your project is going to meet the low to moderate income national objective, you have 2 ways to kind of punch that ticket to get into the national objective door. And the first is that spreadsheet of your project area household surveys. So you'll have your whole project area that you define, and then a spreadsheet of all the individual household income surveys that you've collected. We do not need you at the time of application to submit the actual completed household income surveys. If your project is selected for award, those individual household income surveys will be verified in the pre-contract period by the program administrator assigned to the project. At the time of application, we only need a copy of the spreadsheet summarizing the household income survey results. And Joanne, I see you have your hand raised, so please jump in.
Yeah. Okay. As it relates to the advertisements and copies of notices, it's very important that you also include the minutes of the public hearings and the sign-in sheets, because these types of projects work better from the ground up. And so we've got to see that there's community buy-in, that there's just not a bunch of consultants and engineers championing these projects, but it's actually the people that are asking for this to be done. So we've got to see that there are community people at these public hearings, that they sign in, and that you have minutes of that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. And related to that, if you have a housing rehab project or a community services facility project or a water sewer project, please do let us know in that household survey result spreadsheet that they have signed participation agreements. We will verify those participation agreements before we award a project. Okay. And then the other option to document the project's ability to meet the low to moderate income national objective is the documentation that a project area is a low mod area using the HUD low moderate income survey data mapping tool. And now I'm going to share my screen to show you what that looks like. And I'm super excited because I love this map. And I'm going to also drop the link in the chat so that you all can save it to your bookmarks so that you too can spend time in this map and love it as much as I do. Because it's super helpful. And again, this is your ticket to get you in the door. Okay. Can I get a thumbs up in the chat that folks can see the screen that says LMISD map application 2016 through 2020? Thank you, Terry. Okay, so the link that I put in the chat will take you to this website. So bookmark this site for yourself so that you can use it in the future and share it with your friends. This is a way that HUD will allow localities to document the low mod income benefit for CDBG projects. So when you get to this page, in the right corner, you're going to click the box that says view, the blue box that says view. And that's going to open up a new tab. And it's going to look like this. You're going to see a grayscale view of the world, and you'll see some text in the right side of the screen. What you will do is you'll go up to the search bar in the upper right, and you're going to type in your locality. For this example, I'm going to type in Remington, Virginia. You don't have to worry about capitalization or anything like that. So spelled it wrong, 2 M's. And it's going to hone in just to that area. So on this screen where there's words, there's a little arrow that says collapse. If you click that, all of that content goes away. And then you can see just the red line around Remington, Virginia. So I'm going to click in the red square or the red shape. And you'll notice a pop-up box. And this is by the block group 2 census tract 9307.06 in Fauquier County, Virginia. You zoom out a little bit and it'll show you everything that's covered in that block group and census tract. This pop-up table, if you scroll down, it's going to tell you the number of people who are low mod in that blue area. So it's 1,340 people, low mod. That is a number you would use if you were doing a project in that blue area. The percent here, the low mod percent, is only 50.2. So that means they don't hit that threshold. However, if you're going to do something just within the town limits of Remington, you'll go to the top of that box where it says 1 of 4. And I apologize, the font is small. If you click on that, you'll get options. I can choose by block groups. I can choose by place, which is the actual town of Remington, or I can choose by a subdivision, county subdivision, or the county as a whole. I'm going to choose the LMISD by place. So for the town of Remington. And now it's only the town of Remington. And if I look over here in this table, the low mod percentage within the town limits of Remington is 68.5%. So the town of Remington is a low mod area. So if you wanted to do, for example, a water line replacement project within the town limits of Remington, you could use 68.5% as your ticket in the door. Yep, we are a low mod area. And then when you're building out your project area within the town limits, that's an LMA, you can say, we're going to do 1, 2, 3 Easy Street and 4, 5, 6, or like easy street and then not so easy street. And there are 20 houses on this street. So we're going to use this percentage to estimate that there's 68.5% low mod on these streets. So you'll build out your information based off of the LMA data. If you are proposing to replace all lines in the town of Remington, you would just go 68.5%, and our low mod population is 385. Diana, unfortunately, I don't think that you can do this by street, but you are welcome to try and report back to the group. That would make it super handy. And so that's how you can use this tool to see if your locality is a low mod area. And I can give an example of a project in Southwest Virginia. The town of Pound is doing a water line replacement project, and it is within the town limits. And so we are using the LMA data for the town of Pound, but not every single household is in this phase. So we worked with the Public Service Authority to get a list of the households in that phase and propose how many residents approximately will benefit, how many households approximately will benefit, and then we use that LMA data to help document the number of households in that particular project. That way it sets up the locality to come back for another CDBG eligible project within the town of Pound to maybe complete any other households without the duplication of benefit. I know that that was a very quick overview of how to use this tool, and I am happy to meet with folks one-on-one at a later date to kind of help navigate through for a particular community if needed. So please do feel free to reach out for that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and bookmark that website, y'all. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, all CDBG projects need to be managed by a project management team. We care so deeply about this approach to projects that we have it written into the CDBG agreement that a locality will sign if they are awarded a CDBG project. And so whenever possible, we want those project management team members to be identified by name and title at the time of the application. We understand that sometimes, like your architect or your engineer, they might not be identified until after the fact because you might need CDBG money to procure for those services. But whenever possible, by name and role, list in your application and then your draft project management plan that you include with your application who is the chief elected officer and the chief administrative official. Please identify your locality finance director who will be responsible for maintaining all of the financial documentation on behalf of the locality if the grant is awarded. The grant manager, if that person is someone on the locality's staff, if that will be someone from your planning district commission, or if it's going to be procured, a consultant procured to manage the grant on the locality's behalf. And if your project is a housing rehab project and you know who the housing rehab specialist is, please identify that person. And same for the engineer or architect. If those folks have already been identified, please list them by name and affiliation in the application in the management plan attachment. And importantly, that Joanne mentioned previously, we want to see that these projects are community driven. So please do list the name of your project spark plug. It's so important that this person have a role on your management team, and this person will be invited to the contract negotiation meetings should this project get awarded, and we want to see their involvement all the way throughout because these projects don't happen without the spark plugs, and we want those spark plugs to be people within the community. Next slide. Okay, now this goes back to Kelly.
All right, I'm back. So this is a common mistake that we had last year with our applications. What is a community needs assessment versus a project needs assessment? And a community needs assessment is where you look at the entirety of the town or the county and say, hey, these are the priorities that we are looking at. And then a project needs assessment is where you do that specifically for a project. So very analogous to the difference between an activation grant, which would be a community needs assessment, and a project needs assessment, which would be a project-driven planning grant. You don't have to have planning grants to do these two different types of assessments, but you know, if you've gone through the planning grant process, you have usually done it. Community needs assessment are things like your comp study, your comp plan, a general community needs survey or broad public input sessions, and then the documentation you would have in your application would be your comprehensive plan and studies, regional plans, plans that the PDCs or regional commissions have done for your specific locality or region, so on and so forth. And then project needs, they would be identified through a specific survey for this project or project area, input from project area residents, etc. And then that supporting documentation would be the survey that you used, survey instrument that you used, spreadsheet of survey results, participation agreements, consent orders, letters from residents, letters of support, so on and so forth. Next slide.
All right, I think this is where I am taking over. This is Catherine Farnsler. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how these applications get scored. So they are all out of 100 points. And this is not on the slide, but the minimum score to be eligible for a CDBG award is 60 points. And that score is broken down this way. So 40 of those points are going to be in evaluating the need for the project. And that's comprised of the community needs and project needs assessments and evaluation there that Kelly just spoke about, as well as the demand and impact of the proposed project. Then we're going to look at capacity. That's worth 30 points of the 100. And in this kind of big bucket, we are looking at grant history. We're looking at capacity of individual staff as well as organizational capacity. And then the last 30 points here, approach or feasibility. We're looking at, how are you proposing to do this? So what national objectives are being met, and feasibility, which is kind of some more of the technical stuff. And then we have an activity-specific evaluation, which depends on which project type you are applying for. I'm seeing somebody in here that says, are you sharing your screen? Can anybody else not see my screen? Can I get some thumbs up?
We can see the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh. Maybe try sharing it again. I see it.
Okay.
But
let me just
we
give
have
it a
several
shot.
people saying they can't see it. So yeah, maybe just reset it.
That's really peculiar. Let's see. All right. Let me know if it's any better now. I am resharing. I am going to move on forward. And just as a reminder, we are going to be posting these slides and that's so weird. We'll be posting these slides and a recording of the presentation. It sounds like some folks can and some folks cannot. I'm not quite sure what to do here. All right, I'm just going to move forward and let folks come and find these slides once they get posted. So the next slide, this is just about how do you get to the application? You want to apply for these funds. The best way to do that is you can just go to our DHCD homepage, and there is a little button in the upper right corner that's going to say Access CAMS. So you click on that, and you go to the Applications and Programs tab and click Apply. And then there should be a drop-down menu where you can select from programs, and the one you're going to want is Community Development Block Grant 2025. and you just click go, it'll come up. When you click the apply button, that should populate the application for you. And that's where you can select the project type that you're applying for and upload your budget, add the attachments, and answer the narrative questions. And just some tips for CAMs. Save your work often. Honestly, I recommend like maybe copying and pasting the questions into a Microsoft Word document. Oh yeah, that's down a little bit further. Because there's nothing more infuriating than typing directly into the box and then something refreshes and doesn't save. And then you've lost all your hard work. So save your work often, but also keep a backup copy somewhere. Google Chrome is the best browser that we've found to access CAMs. It can be a little glitchy with other browsers. Let's see. Check your locality's CAM's user roles and assignments prior to starting the application. So multiple staff can work on an application at the same time. I do just want to reiterate something we said before is that like the locality does have to be the applicant. So if you're collaborating with folks from like a PDC, they're not going to have the same privileges to get into an application. There are character limits in the text boxes. So you get about 6,000 characters. So yeah, using that Microsoft Word and kind of checking your character count in advance will help you avoid being cut off. Yeah, Kelly, is that not what I just said? I hope I didn't just say the wrong thing. And then last but not least, any graphics, tables, or charts, we don't want those copied and pasted into text boxes. Instead, use the appropriate attachment provided to upload those as, okay, thank you, Kelly, to provide those in the attachment where they belong. And I think I'm giving it back to Joanne here.
Okay, this is the list of dates for our Q&A sessions that are coming up on the individual project types. I do want to remind you that you need not attend every one of these. You should focus on the type of project that you're working on for this funding cycle, and so that you can make sure that you have all the tips and tricks for that particular project type. So housing rehab will be June 30th from 11 o'clock to 12 noon. Public infrastructure, June 30th from 1 to 2 in the afternoon. Economic development, July 1 from 11 till noon. Public services, July 1st from 1 until 2. And planning grants, July 2nd from 11 until 12 noon. Feel free to join any that you wish, but do make sure you attend the session that you are applying for this year. You maybe even be asked to explain a little bit about what you're applying for, because whatever your question is may be a question of someone else who's attending, and we can learn from each other. These will be very informal. There will not be a complete presentation like it was today. It is exactly what it says, Q&A. So have your questions ready to get answered when we meet with you. And thank you so much for joining us today. If you're not available in this time slot, you can contact someone from our office for a one-on-one, but we felt that it would be better to have group Q&As to get questions answered. But we will accommodate with technical assistance however we can. Again, thank you. The competitive application deadline is August 26th at 11:59 p.m. Our open submission application window is June 16th through October 16th. For CAMS assistance questions, there is the website, and for general application questions and for project questions, please contact our CDBG email address. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Welcome.
I am just going to end the recording since it looks like we are winding down here.
Thank you.